Good evening, guys. Welcome to this NEET PG Live Daily. You are welcome to yet another session on this endocrinology. And today we will be discussing the pituitary hormones and related drugs. We have already covered, the thyroid hormones, the anti-diabetic drugs. So this is the next topic in the series, and this will also be covered in two parts. So today we will be covering the first part of this topic, and it is the lecture 5 in the endocrinology series, the drugs affecting or used in endocrinology disorder. So guys, let us talk about the master of endocrine orchestra, that is pituitary, and its hormone and related drugs. For guys, those who are appearing on this platform for the first time, let me introduce myself that I am Dr. Pramod Sharma, and I am a super specialty in clinical pharmacology. I have done my MD and DM both from PGI Chandigarh. I am also the recipient of Rashtriya Gaurav Award in year 2017, as well as I have been, signed as brand ambassador of position of brand ambassador for Bentham Science Publisher, which is a globally popular publisher which publishes medical journals, books, etc. And I have worked as subject expert committee member on behalf of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to help Central Drug Standard Control Organization. So this is my brief introduction. And guys, I am again reiterating this fact that you all have this should have in fact this Telegram channel, that is an app similar to WhatsApp. It's a messenger app, but just having this app will not serve your purpose. You need to join this group, and in this group you cannot share messages, rather you can only receive messages. And we educator or the Unacademy people keep sharing their the timetable of the daily classes, or even the classes day after also. So you will have proper information about the timetable of these classes on YouTube, so you can always make some tweaking in your daily schedule and can watch these sessions live. Maybe you are waiting for some special class or important class which you do not want to miss, or you like some educator very most, you don't want to miss any class of that particular educator. So that becomes easier for you to get information. So this is always good to have beforehand information about the classes schedule. And this is also important that many of us share our this link of the YouTube video, so you don't have to search our lecture on the YouTube, etc. You can directly click that link, and it will take you to the NEET PG YouTube platform, and you can directly watch those lessons if you missed the live lessons. This is the subscription based service that has been launched by Unacademy. This is named as Plus, and this subscription has many advantages. In fact, the features that are necessary for preparing for or making this preparation worthy, and the chances of improving your selection, chances of improving or enhancing your chances of getting selected in the NEET entrance examination or any other PG examination. So this is not just simply live classes that you are attending on this live daily, but these live classes are a little different in the sense, though we discuss the same thing, the classes or the quality of the classes are same at every platform, but these classes are interesting in the sense that they are interactive, in the sense that number of learners are very less on this Plus, because this is a subscription based premier service. So that comes at a cost. So you have ample opportunity. You may interrupt the educator number of times during the class, in fact, to resolve your queries, your doubts, or any hitches in the conceptual aspect of any particular point and all that. So this will give you a feel of being in the class physically. So this real-time interaction is must, and is a part and parcel of an enhanced learning experience. Not only that, it also offers live polls and leaderboard facilities. These live polls, you can always share your positive feedbacks, any creative suggestion, and that is important for us because based on that, the Unacademy takes proper action and would try to implement if that actually requires or is something which would definitely enhance the quality of the sessions being delivered or the content being shared. Leaderboard keeps you competitive because it gives you a snapshot of your performance in comparison to the group, so you can very well understand that where exactly you are standing among your group, and would definitely give you an idea about whether you are going at the same pace that the group is going, or you need to move little faster, you are weaker in certain areas where you need to work upon and be in align and get aligned with the rest of the group. So this is important. These features actually makes this particular service or this platform very interesting. Other than that, when you talk about the study material, there is no dearth of study material on this particular platform. You have test series, quizzes with their analysis. There is no unlimited number of this series are available. You can take advantage of that information contained in these series and the analysis wise, so that would definitely improve your level of understanding and would definitely enhance your analytical as well as evaluation skills. And better the more you do, better you learn, and more chances are always enhanced. Probability of getting selected or cracking an exam get better with doing these test series and all that. And as per the mandate that for the educators on this Unacademy Plus subscription service, that after every 3 live lessons the educator is supposed to take a live doubt clearing session, where a learner can ask anything which he comes across later and finding it difficult to decipher the information, or having any doubt on something, or would has something which has been taught and he comes up with some new information to verify or authenticate that information. He might always ask these things during doubt clearing session from the educator, where otherwise there is no time problem during the live classes itself. He can interrupt the educator when and as and when required. And this is a kind of product which has been created by Unacademy, which is the best learning platform right now in this country. And this has been created keeping all the requirement of a PG aspirant for that is required for successfully preparing for an entrance examination. So it has all the ingredients what a PG aspirant might like to have. So this is about the subscription. So all the services are under one roof. If you have this subscription, one subscription with unlimited access, so this is something, if you have it, means you don't need anything extra. Other than that, just your genuine effort are required. These are the subscription rates for different duration of subscription rate. It varies from 1 month to 24 months, and the subscription is of longer duration, that is definitely cheaper. That is but these rates are without discount. But if you use you have a blank space here when you go on site to buy a subscription, so you can apply referral code of mine, like my referral code is Pramod, Dr. Pramod. So if you apply this and then proceed to pay, so you will get 10% instant discount. So that advantage you can get after similarly, like this has been applied by someone, suppose some name. So 10% discount means it's a significant amount you can save just by putting in few words, a few letters in this blank space. And though the subscription is available for from 1 month to 24 months, but we definitely and most commonly recommend these two subscription duration, because the 12-month subscription is important for each and everyone, because being associated with or getting associated with this Unacademy for a month or so would not make any drastic change on your outlook or your preparation or something like that. So you need to have patience and get attached to one particular learning platform, let it be Unacademy or anything else, but this much time is required to get acquainted with or familiar with the the style of how this Unacademy learning this PG Unacademy Plus is going to offer you during this period, how it actually makes you more ready for the entrance examination, so that you can more efficiently take it up. And this is important also in the sense that during this period the entire syllabus which needs to be covered is voluminous, and this much time is required. You will be exposed to the expert from all the speciality of this medical science, so you should have some time to get introduced to everybody and enjoy their teaching style and their knowledge base. And we educator, as a requirement of you guys, we keep posting special courses on this platform, which are in most of the cases are directed or specifically made keeping in view the special demand of or requirement of a particular PG examination. And if you need, that can be customized as per your need. So this kind of things are important. So you, during this 1 year period, you will be attending many such courses. If you religiously follow these courses, definitely you are going to make wonders in the examination. This 24-month subscription is more important for students who are still UG student, suppose in the final year or 4th year, and they are in the already in the competition mode. They have started preparing for PG and all that. At the same time, and in parallel to that, they are preparing for their university exams as well. So this will definitely help them not only score better in their university exam, but they don't feel alien while they are appearing for their just after completion of their internship, though they do work hard during their internship for PG preparation and all that. And if it is blended with this or you get support of this particular learning subscription based learning experience, that might make lot of difference. Maybe in the very first go he or she might crack the exam. So this is important. So 24 months I will suggest for them. So this is very important that if anybody buy a subscription for any duration, that is 6 months or longer, would have a facility to or can enjoy the facility of paying in no cost EMI option, or can exercise this no cost EMI option. So that would be little easier on your pocket as well. And after application of this referral code, that you should not forget in any condition, you should apply this, because this will fetch you 10% instant discount on the total subscription amount. For example, for 24 months this comes down drastically from 40,000 to 60,000. So you can very well understand the power of this referral code. Similarly for 12 months, so this 10% discount is not a small amount. That would definitely is anything saved is is always better, and you can pay in different using different digital mode, whatever you have with us, have with you, and which you feel is convenient for you. So that was about Unacademy Plus subscription, the important features, and why should you be there on this platform, because it will definitely help you prepare well for your exams. you should give a try and just find out, because unless until you are into it, you cannot really explore the total potential or whole potential of this program, which has been created keeping in view the requirement of you guys for preparation of the PG entrance. So today we'll be starting the pituitary hormones and related drugs, that is part 1. So let us move to the topic proper. We know this pituitary is considered as the master of endocrine orchestra. This is the endocrine gland which controls all other endocrine glands, and this is in turn controlled by many mediators released by hypothalamus. So there is an axis is found either from hypothalamus pituitary to adrenal axis, or hypothalamus pituitary to adrenal axis, or the gonadal axis, or the thyroid axis, like this. So this axis, intact axis, is important for functioning of all other every this endocrine system or endocrine gland. So the pituitary hormones are usually under the control of either the stimulatory factor which is released by the hypothalamus, or an inhibitory factor which inhibits the release of such pituitary hormones. So we have two important category of pituitary hormones that are secreted either from the anterior pituitary or posterior pituitary under the influence of the hypothalamic hormone, or maybe inhibited by hypothalamic hormone. So this is the hypothalamic hormone, growth hormone releasing hormone, that is GHRH. It actually acts on the receptor presents on somatotropes in the pituitary and enhances the release of growth hormone. So it is a positive regulator of growth hormone release, and this growth hormone ultimately acts on target hormone, because most of the effect of growth hormones are indirectly through the insulin-like growth factor 1. This is the target hormone on which this growth hormone acts. Not all the actions, but majority of the actions are exercised through or exhibited through IGF-1. Somatostatin is also mediator which is released by hypothalamus, and this has negatively regulate growth hormone release. That it can reduce growth hormone release, it can reduce thyroid stimulating hormone. So this is very important, that whenever we are treating patient with somatostatin analogs, I will be discussing about these drugs, because somatostatin as such is not useful in therapy because of certain shortcomings associated with somatostatin. But definitely we have somatostatin analogs, but they have this inherent activity of reducing thyroid stimulating hormone. So these patients are vulnerable to develop hypothyroidism, which require routine monitoring. It was said that prolactin is primarily under inhibitory control. It is so dopamine is a substance which actually inhibits or decrease prolactin release, and it acts directly on the target tissues. It does not act on any target hormones, but prolactin release can be enhanced by thyrotropin releasing hormone, that is TRH. So that can this TRH not only increase thyroid stimulating hormone secretion that affects thyroid hormone T3 and T4, but this can also enhance release of prolactin. So that is the reason why in patient of hypothyroidism, when there is high TSH level because of the loss of negative feedback action or on TSH release because of reduced thyroid hormones, this excess thyrotropin releasing hormone is secreted, and that TRH may affect increased prolactin release, can produce hyperprolactinemia like of state, and this that is why it is said that a patient suffering for thyroid disorders or hypothyroidism more likely to have fertility issues. So that I will be discussing gradually. It's not I can't explain everything on this table, but I tell you how this will happen. And another releasing hormone is that gonadotropin releasing hormone, that is called GnRH. It affects anterior pituitary and stimulate release of follicle stimulating hormone, that is FSH, or increase luteinizing hormone. These both hormones collectively are called gonadotropins, and they have effect on the release of certain gonadal hormone. For example, for example, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. These are the class of hormones, which class they belong to. Many of them are actually glycoproteins, some are peptides, so we have classified these pituitary hormones in three categories: those which are derived from a large precursor molecule, pre-opiomelanocortin derived hormone, because it gives rise to not only corticotrophin is also better known as ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. Not only this also leads to synthesis of beta endorphin, breakdown of degradation of this POMC at different site can produce different hormones. So beta endorphin are also derived from. So this corticotrophin and alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone is involved in alpha MSH is involved in melanin synthesis. But other than that, it has role in that is in sexual behavior and feeding pattern. Also it affects appetite as well, and acts through melanocortin 1 receptor, melanocortin 1 receptor, and this corticotrophin acts through the melanocortin 2 receptors, right? These are all G protein coupled receptors, so their action is mediated through G protein coupled receptors. As such, beta endorphin also acts through mu receptor. These are also G protein coupled receptors. And this somatotropic family of hormones, we have growth hormone, we have prolactin. The difference is they act as a cytokine receptor, that is JAK-STAT pathway and all that superfamily. This placental lactogen is mentioned here because it is not secreted by the pituitary or something. It is secreted by the placenta during the pregnancy. And as it belongs to somatotropic family of hormones, so it is very structurally close to or means similar to structure in growth hormone, and also function are similar to growth hormone. So during pregnancy, it is responsible for production of IGF-1 in the fetus and involved in the growth of almost, if not all, tissues of the fetus. And this is one of the considered as diabetogenic factor produced during the pregnancy, may lead to insulin resistance, and that is the characteristic of growth hormone also. So this may be one of the factor in pregnancy induced gestational diabetes as well. This can lead to or can produce insulin resistance and can in fact raise blood sugar level. This glycoprotein hormones, these are luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. This human chorionic gonadotropin hormone is not actually produced by kidney or pituitary, etc. We have this LH, FSH and TSH. These are glycoprotein hormone, but this human chorionic gonadotropin hormone is also type of glycoprotein hormone. It has a lot of uses in the when we will talk about fertility and all that, and spermatogenesis, etc. This human chorionic gonadotropin has much role. It is said this LH, FSH and HCG all have similar beta alpha unit, but beta unit is a little different, that imparts selectivity for their action, specificity of their action. And this HCG is many a time used in place of luteinizing hormone because they act through the same receptor, LH receptors. So this has its own therapeutic utility and all that. So they all act through the G protein coupled receptor, except this somatotropic family of hormone, prolactin and growth hormone. They act through cytokine receptor, that is JAK-STAT pathway. The rest of the hormones act through G protein coupled receptor. Please remember this corticotrophin acts through melanocortin receptors 2, alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone acts through melanocortin receptor 1. Right. This is the diagram of the pituitary and how the hormones are released. Actually, most of the hormones are released by these three nucleus. This supraoptic nucleus, paraventricular nucleus, and arcuate nucleus. Different, and this pituitary is divided into anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. The posterior pituitary actually produce arginine, vasopressin, and oxytocin, and it is usually derived from this SO and PVN, and the PVN can also give rise to thyrotropin releasing hormone, CRH, SST, and arcuate nucleus, GHRH, GnRH, and dopamine. So these are the hormones which are released by these nucleus. So this could be important to know that these nucleus in the hypothalamus actually are involved in releasing of these hormones. So these are all releasing hormone or inhibitory hormone. Pituitary hormones are secreted from there, but this hypothalamic hormone, this posterior pituitary hormones are directly released from this, and they are secreted in the blood directly. There is nothing that actually posterior pituitary synthesize. These are the target tissues where these hormones actually act. You can see they are under the control of internal and external stimuli. They are different thing, because from the higher center they can always be modulated, their release can be modulated. So there are several neurotransmitters are involved in that, because from the higher centers. And hypothalamus has the neurosecretory cells. These neurosecretory cells actually release these releasing hormone, GHRH, GnRH, etc., and the oxytocin and vasopressin. So in the posterior pituitary, this oxytocin is involved in this milk letting reflex, that is action on breast as well as on uterus. It is involved in contraction of the uterus during the labor. And this ADH acts on kidney, so it preserves, acting on the aquaporins and all that in collecting ducts, is involved in the preservation of water. So this is an antidiuretic hormone. And prolactin from the anterior pituitary has effect on the breast, is involved in the production of milk and ejection of milk, etc. And growth hormone, which is released, has action on various tissues, right from the bones to cartilage to skeletal muscle to adipose tissue to kidney, and even it has action directly on many tissues. GnRH actually facilitates release of gonadotropin like FSH, LH. LH is also known as interstitial stimulating hormone, interstitial cells stimulating hormone. So LH is known by different name also. This FSH, LH are important for production of testosterone and process of spermatogenesis. They together act in collaboration with each other, and it is important for maintaining normal spermatogenesis and testosterone production from the Leydig cells. Similarly, the FSH and ALH in females are important for act on ovary and responsible for the cyclical changes, that is important for pregnancy and all that. So, and actually release of estrogen and progesterone. So all these actions, you can see these cyclical changes in FSH, LHS is important for development of the follicles, and the release of these hormones prepares uterus for conception and all that. So these are all action of these hormones which are released. And ACTH, that is released under the influence of CRH, acts on adrenal cortex, not medulla. Medulla is a collection of sympathetic neurons actually that releases adrenaline and all that. So cortisol is released mainly, that is the main glucocorticoid, and under the influence of TSH, thyroid gland secretes thyroid hormones T3 and T4. Rather, the T4 is important for for negative feedback regulation of thalamus and anterior pituitary, because T4, I told you in the thyroid class that pituitary and brain, they have their own deiodinase, that is D2, and that actually directly takes T4 from the circulation, not the preformed T3. It takes T4 from there and converts it into T3, and that is responsible for negative feedback action. So you can see all this testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, glucocorticoid, thyroid hormones, all they have negative feedback on either on the anterior lobe of the pituitary or the hypothalamus, and can negatively regulate their own secretion. So this is the diagram, very good diagram, which actually covers entire the story behind this release of pituitary and control of their target organ where they act, how they are release, and the control loop, feedback control loop is explained very well here. So let us talk first about the growth hormone. We know that this growth hormone is required during the childhood as well as adolescence, because these are the guys who actually are in the growth phase, adolescent and children. And this is because this growth hormone is essential for attaining the normal adult size, otherwise you will remain dwarf. So that is why the individuals, the children who suffers from growth hormone deficiency, they have short stature and considered as or called as dwarf. It also has, growth hormone has very important effect throughout postnatal life. Throughout your postnatal life, they have very important effect in lipid and carbohydrate metabolism. Not only that, it affects lean body mass and bone density. It means it has effect on the protein metabolism, the bone growth, etc., bone density, etc. And these growth promoting effect of these growth hormones are principally mediated via another hormone that is called IGF-1. This is the target hormone on which growth hormone acts. This is insulin like growth factor 1, and this is also known as somatomedin C. Just remember, because we will be using drugs that are recombinant IGF-1 as a drug also. So any deficiency of growth hormone, whether it be congenital deficiency or acquired deficiency because of any reason, either in children or in adolescent, what happens, the child or adolescent fails to achieve target adult height, and usual target adult height is mid parental height. You take height of the both parents and divide it by 2 and little bit plus minus, that is mid parental height. So we expect that most of the children will achieve this adult height, final adult height at least. Though exceptions are there, it may be even more than that, much more than that. And other than that, it also can affect body fat and muscle mass, because deficiency of growth hormones lead to increased adipogenicity, that is increase in body fat, disproportionately increase in body fat and disproportionate decrease in muscle mass, as the lean body mass decreases. And when there is deficiency in the adults, the most thing, the thing which mostly suffers, the area which or the organ which mainly suffers is the skeletal muscles. So these people have disproportionate lean body mass. They do not have muscular growth and all that. They lose muscles. So this is the total release and the negative feedback, the releasing hormone and all that, how this growth hormone release is controlled. You can see this GHR is released from hypothalamus, that may be under the control of another higher center from the cortex and all that. So it inhibits, it stimulates release of growth hormone. Growth hormone acts on several tissues like liver, bone, adipocyte, muscles, kidney, chondrocytes. Can act directly as well as an IGF-1 through IGF-1. So and this actually, the IGF-1 level is responsible for negative feedback release of growth hormone that can act on both at anterior pituitary as well as in hypothalamus. Right. And this SST, I said, is an inhibitory hormone, inhibitory mediator, which is released by hypothalamus, that prevent not only release of GHRH but also has direct action on growth hormone. There is one more mediator called ghrelin. This has been linked with, this is produced by enterochromophil cells of, these are endocrine-like cells present in the GIT and most commonly released from the gastric mucosa. This ghrelin is also known as hunger hormone. Its level is increased in, when the patient has hypoglycemia or starvation, etc., because it is also known as hunger hormone. And before a patient who is very hungry, the ghrelin levels are very high, but after the meal the level comes down. And these ghrelin also have central action other area, which is where it is involved in control of appetite, etc., through central action, and that is through neuropeptide Y and agouti related peptide AGRP. So this is important, this ghrelin. This can promote release of growth hormone, and it inhibits GHRS, it inhibits the SST, through which so that the growth hormone release will increase indirectly, and it promote release of GHRS. So indirectly ghrelin increases circulating level of growth hormone. So this is all about ghrelin. And how this growth hormone, because growth hormone, I told you, acts through JAK-STAT pathway. This growth hormone has one single molecule that has two hormone binding site. So this actually engages two these receptors are JAK-STAT pathway receptor. They are single transmembrane helix. So this one hormone can bind to two receptors, so there occurs the dimerization after binding, because this has two receptor binding site. So this leads to engagement of this Janus kinase, which is a tyrosine kinase, and it leads to phosphorylation of certain other adapter protein that goes inside that nucleus and can affect transcription of certain genes, and that will lead to translation of certain proteins. So this actually acts on genetic level as well. So these are the effects, and this is how the control of growth hormone release is concerned, and how this the receptor mediated mechanism, how effect of growth hormone is actually occurs at cellular level. We have certain terms like somatropin. Somatropin is nothing but is a purified polypeptide or recombinant GH. Usually growth hormone is made up of 191 amino acids, right? So it is a purified polypeptide form of recombinant GH, but it needs to be given once daily. If you give one injection, its effect lasts for around 36 hours. The somapacitan is very recently approved preparation of growth hormone, which is similar to native recombinant growth hormone, but it is approved for treatment of adults with growth hormone deficiency, and it has longer acting. It can be given once weekly subcutaneously. This is the advantage. So as I already explained that most of the growth promoting effect of this growth hormones are mediated through, if not all the effects, most of the growth promoting effect is through insulin like growth factor. So it increases the circulating insulin growth factors 1, and most of the IGF-1 is synthesized in the liver, because the growth hormone acts on the liver, adipose tissue, etc. So this, under the influence of this IGF-1, actually there occurs the increase in longitudinal bone growth, because to achieve the ultimate or predicted adult height, the bone growth, longitudinal bone growth is important. So this occurs, this actually have influence on the longitudinal bone growth. It enhances longitudinal bone growth until the epiphysis closes, and that is near the end of the puberty. Not only that, it has anabolic effect on the muscles, both in children and adults, and also has catabolic effect on adipose tissue. So it reduces adipogenicity and increases the lean body mass. The effect on carbohydrate metabolism, if we talk about growth hormone, that is little complex. Why? Because the growth hormone has tendency to induce insulin resistance, and that can lead to increase blood glucose level, and it has diabetogenic, it is considered as a diabetogenic, but in contrast to growth hormone, this IGF-1, which is secreted, that has effect like insulin, so it actually can produce hypoglycemia. IGF-1 can produce hypoglycemia. So there is contrasting effect of these is this growth hormone and IGF-1 on the carbohydrate metabolism. Sermorelin is a synthetic GHRH, which is used in the otherwise this GHR is actually 44 amino acid peptide, but from the terminal amino terminal end 29 amino acid segment is taken. That is actually sermorelin, the synthetic GHR, which is used for diagnosing the GH deficiency, or this is used for that. So this has diagnostic utility, not therapeutic utility, diagnostic utility to defend to detect GH deficiency and all that, right? What are the clinical uses of growth hormone? Growth hormone actually is the, if you consider clinical utility, the best use is in the short stature, the children with short stature. But this growth hormone therapy is only successful when this short stature is mainly due to the GH deficiency in real sense. So this individual responds best to the GH therapy, but the children who are having short stature because of the constitutional or maybe because of malnutrition and all that secondary causes, this GH deficiency, this GH replacement is not going to affect their may not have much effect on this short stature. Other than that, this growth hormone has also been used in HIV associated wasting or cachexia, because this is very common in HIV infected patients. So but the injection, because this needs to be given every day, you have to keep rotating the injection sites, otherwise it may lead to hyper lipodystrophy. To avoid lipodystrophy, you need to keep rotating, same as in the case of insulin. It is also useful for a situation or condition, clinical entity called short bowel syndrome, especially in patients those who are maintained on total parenteral nutrition. So it is said that the therapy with growth hormone may increase intestinal growth and can also improve intestinal functions. And it is advised that the growth hormone should be used along with glutamine in these cases, because this glutamine also has trophic effect on the intestinal mucosa. So this is important. Growth hormone in combination with glutamine will have better effect than the growth hormone alone. In addition to that, it has also been used in HIV adipose tissue redistribution syndrome. I will show you, because there is specific drug has been approved for this situation. But this is the off-label use of growth hormone. It is not an approved use. There are specific drug which has been approved for this. So this HIV adipose tissue redistribution syndrome, where it can be used off-label. And this growth hormone is very was popular among athletes to increase their athletic performance and their muscle mass, etc. But this has been considered as a banned substance by WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency. So the growth hormone is a doping agent. So you can't use growth hormone if you are performing any sports competition, etc. That is banned by the WADA. It is believed that though the children usually need growth hormone therapy, because they are the most important patient for this growth hormone therapy, so it is considered that they tolerate GH growth hormone therapy better, and ADRs are relatively less. But you can see the list of ADR. I am little surprised how they are relatively less. They can develop serotumor cerebri, which can manifest as the papilledema, or it can manifest as a visual disturbances. It can produce nausea and or vomiting, or so it is always before starting treatment, it is important to have fundoscopy and keep means repeat this fundoscopy periodically thereafter. Slipped capital femoral epiphysis, that is another important side effect. Progression of scoliosis, because a child is growing, then he has any kind of this sideways deviation of the spine, etc., that may actually get exaggerated. So this can lead to progression of scoliosis, may lead to fluid retention manifesting as peripheral edema, and this can produce hyperglycemia because it has diabetogenic activity. Pancreatitis may occur, it may rather lead to gynecomastia, etc. And also there is increased risk of asphyxiation in children, especially those who are very obese and also have obstructive sleep apnea, especially the patient of Prader-Willi syndrome. Proliferative retinopathy may occur, though it is rare, and also it is not to be used in children in the first year of the treatment of any pediatric tumors, including leukemias, and within 2 years of treatment of medulloblastoma or ependymoma. So you can see that the long list of warning, the side effects, etc., is there for children. Especially in adults, I don't say that the above mentioned effects cannot occur. They can also occur in adults, but more common are peripheral edema, myalgias, arthralgia, especially of the wrist and the hand joints, and carpal tunnel syndrome can develop. And also this growth hormone has effect on the activity of cytochrome P450 enzyme. So under the influence of growth hormone replacement therapy, the activity of the CYP450 may be enhanced, and that might lead to increased degradation or metabolism of the drugs which are the substrate for this particular group of enzymes. As such, growth hormone therapy is not associated with increase in the risk of any type of cancer or tumors, but it is always recommended that if a patient is having active malignant disease or active tumor undergoing treatment, so growth hormone therapy should be withheld, and unless as long as the treatment is continued, and when the treatment is over, then only you should start growth hormone therapy. So these are the all important points about growth hormone. So growth hormone we have but there the problem is not only solved here, because if we have growth hormone, synthetic growth hormone available, that means your problem is over. No, still there is a small proportion of children who, despite adequate growth hormone therapy, they do not respond to their short stature, does not respond to the therapy with growth hormone. So these individuals or these subset of patient must be having problem, or they have actually having very severe deficiency of IGF-1 that could be secondary to either mutation in the growth hormone receptors, or they can have any mutation at any steps subsequent to the receptor in the signaling cascade, any step in the signaling cascade there may be mutation. There may be increased antibodies, neutralizing antibodies against growth hormone. So whatever growth hormone you gave, that gets neutralized by these antibodies. Or there could be a gene defect of IGF-1. The gene for IGF production, IGF-1 production is defective. So all these patients would not respond to, if you give growth hormone as high. You can give any doses, but these patients are not going to respond, and they have severe IGF-1 deficiencies. And I have told you that majority of the effects of growth hormones are mediated through IGF-1. So such class of or such subset of patient, we required some alternative therapy, and that is in the form of recombinant human IGF-1. So this is known as mecasermin, and this is another mecasermin renafibate. The renafibate is little different from, because it has long acting agent. So this mecasermin is administered subcutaneously BID twice daily, and this is approved only for children. That is to be used only in children. It cannot be used for growth hormone deficiency. In fact, this is special cases where there is IGF-1 deficiency. So it is especially for children only. So this can be used for children twice daily. It is to be administered, and this renafibate is the complex of recombinant human insulin-like growth factor 1 that is actually attached with this recombinant human IGF or insulin-like growth factor binding protein 3. This combining this with this particular protein actually is led to the increase in duration of action of this renafibate. Mecasermin renafibate. Mecasermin as such, I think, has mean half-life of around 12 to 13 hours. But because of certain patent issues, this renafibate is not approved, or its approval has been withdrawn for use in treatment of this IGF-1 deficiency, because this mecasermin needs to be given twice daily, and it is a longer acting drug. So because of this patent issue and all that, it is not being used in short stature or this IGF-1 deficiency, but definitely it has been used in other situations like muscular dystrophy or HIV related adipose redistribution syndrome. This is an approved route, and if there is extreme insulin resistance state. So in all these situations, this mecasermin renafibate has got role. ADRs, if we look at the adverse drug reaction of these drugs, because these drugs behave as insulin, they can interact with insulin receptors. That is why they can produce hypoglycemia. So this is the most important side effect associated with this mecasermin or mecasermin renafibate. So that is why it is recommended whenever you take this dose of these drugs, you should take either a meal or snacks at least 20 minutes before or after the administration of these drugs. So this is the most important side effect. Other than that, they can cause increase in intracranial tension. They can cause adenotonsillar hypertrophy. They can cause lipohypertrophy. So they can get ICT, adenotonsillar hypertrophy, lipohypertrophy, etc. These can also be the side effect of these mecasermin and mecasermin renafibate. I was talking about, because we have drugs, growth hormone can be used in children for to achieve normal growth and development, but in adults this drug somapacitan is hardly, maybe 3-4 months back, this has been approved by US FDA, and this has to be used only in adult GH deficiency as a replacement therapy. It is a long-acting GH derivative, because that's somatropin and all that are to be used on everyday basis, 6 to 7 injections per week in children, and that is peak is achieved within 22 to 4 hours, and the effective plasma concentration remain there for 36 hours. But this is a long-active GH derivative which has T half of around 2 to 3 days. It is designed in such a way which can bind with albumin. You can see this structure. There are certain modification have been done in the native hormone structure, and it is attached to human albumin binding moiety so that it can bind to albumin. So it increases its half-life, and there is a linker molecule in between, spacer, which attaches this albumin binding moiety to human growth hormone, this chain. And the adequacy of the treatment can be decided or judged on the basis of several factors. For example, in adult, we need to check there is no substitute for clinical sign and symptoms. And other than that, we can have laboratory investigation in the form of IGF-1 level. We can do IGF-1 levels, we can see clinical improvement and all that based on signs and symptoms. So keeping these two in mind, we can always guide the therapy and can judge the adequacy of the therapy. This drug is usually used in started with 1.5 milligram every week, started, and initially, and can be increased every 2 to 4 weeks by 0.5 to 1.5 milligram. This is the incremental dose. You can keep increasing as long as this IGF level are in the normal range, and as well as the clinical signs and symptoms are sufficient. So this ultimately, and the maximum dose recommended is 8 milligram. Not more than that should be given per week. And but the women who are receiving oral estrogen, they are to be put on higher initial dose. There the dose is started from 2 milligram instead of 1.5 milligram per week. So this is important. And when one should draw or do the blood sampling to measure the IGF-1 level, what is the appropriate time? Because it is to be taken usually 3 to 4 days after blood is sampled, 3 to 4 days after the prior dose. Suppose the patient has taken the dose on Sunday, one should take the sample on Wednesday or Thursday to measure IGF-1 level. So this timing is also important. This is crucial to judge the adequacy of the treatment. So this somapacetan is a new entity which is a kind of designer molecule, you can say. If we have GH agonist which are required for certain uses, we can have GH antagonist, because there are conditions where there is over secretion of hormones from any adenoma, etc. Can have overgrowth of tissues and all that is called acromegaly. So we need to have GH antagonist also. They are also in therapy being used in clinical practice. We know that GH release is inhibited by somatostatin, which is a negative regulator of the secretion of the growth hormone. But we cannot use somatostatin because of certain shortcomings. First of all, the somatostatin has very short duration of action, maybe 2 to 5 minutes hardly. And it not only affects growth hormone release, it affects the release of the, or inhibit release of the many other hormone. For example, it can inhibit release of TSH. It can inhibit release of insulin. It can inhibit release of glucagon. It can inhibit release of gastrin. You remember D cell in the gastrin, gastric mucosa. So all these, because of this multiple effect on multiple secretions, this is not a favored drug. As I told you, this short duration of action, it's not going to help. So somatostatins analogs were prepared, and they are longer acting and without any loss in the biological activity of the somatostatins. So this actually led to the development of somatostatin analog. So we have the compound that is octreotide. There's the release of growth hormone, inhibition of growth hormone release by this somatostatin is through receptor SST receptor 2 and 5 mainly, though they are receptor SST 1 to 5 type of receptors there, but these two are most importantly involved. So these analogs have high affinity for these receptors, and they are all G protein coupled receptor. You can just see this octreotide is 45 times more potent than somatostatin in inhibiting GH release. Can you imagine how strong or potent GH antagonist it could be? But it is only 2 times as potent as GH in inhibiting insulin release. This is a desirable factor, because if it inhibits insulin release that potently, then it will lead to diabetes in every patient. Though this can lead to problem. This 2 times as potent somatostatin is also important. So its basic uses, this drug has been licensed or legally approved for the treatment of acromegaly, and acromegaly is because of the increased GH secretion, because of some adenoma or something, somatotrope adenoma, carcinoid syndrome, a vipoma, so these are the indication for this. Other than that, it can be used off label for certain other condition, for example diarrhea, and diarrhea of multiple origin, not only simple diarrhea. It could be a secretory diarrhea, it can be related to ileostomy induced diarrhea, it can be a AIDS related diarrhea, HIV related diarrhea, it could be diabetic diarrhea, it can be radiation induced diarrhea, it can be chemotherapy induced diarrhea. So it is affecting all kind of diarrheas, not infective diarrhea, right, or traveler's diarrhea. It is also used off-label in portal hypertension and control of acute esophageal variceal bleeding. How come it affords benefit in these situations? Because this actually inhibits glucagon release. I told you this somatostatin inhibits glucagon release, and glucagon is a very potent splanchnic vasodilator. So if you inhibit glucagon release, there will be splanchnic vasoconstriction kind of situation. So therewise there is a reduced bleeding, variceal bleeding. Dumping syndrome. Dumping syndrome, how come it can help in dumping syndrome? This octreotide actually help in dumping syndrome by various mechanisms. First, it inhibits or delays gastric emptying. So food is not immediately dumped into the the part of the small intestine that is cut, so that immediately not delivered to whatever the intestinal intestine portion is left. Second thing, it increases the total gastric intestinal transit time, delays gastric emptying, intestinal transit time is increased. Other than that, it is producing vasoconstriction. It inhibits insulin release, because many of the symptoms of this dumping syndrome is the insulin release, brisk insulin release. So inhibit insulin release, it causes vasoconstriction, splanchnic vasoconstriction. So many of the the symptoms of these dumping syndromes are controlled by this octreotide, right? It is also used off-label for treatment of sulfonylurea overdose. Sulfonylureas are the drug I was talking about in the last class, that these are actually hypoglycemic drug. If they are given to a normal individual, he will develop hypoglycemia. In fact, the metformin I told you, that was an anti-hyperglycemic drug. It will reduce blood sugar only when the blood sugar is raised. So even if that is given to a normal person, it will not lead to reduction in blood glucose level. So that is more aptly called as anti-hyperglycemic agent. So this sulfonylurea overdose, if patient, what we usually do in hypoglycemia, sulfonylurea overdose is there. So what would be the result? Hypoglycemia, severe hypoglycemia. So what is the treatment of hypoglycemia? If a patient is, we can give dextrose and etc. If the patient is not able to take orally or unconscious or something like that, then we can always give 50% of dextrose, 50 ml of 50% dextrose. But even after 1 or 2 ampoule of 50%, 50 ml of dextrose, the effect is not there, patient is not responding, then only we can give octreotide. 50 to 100 microgram of octreotide, BD or TID depending upon the situation, and this can help. Usually what happens when we give glucose, patient responds. That is fine, patient responds because the blood glucose level is increased, hypoglycemia is corrected. But that glucose which you inject from outside, that actually leads to further insulin release, and patient slips again into the severe hypoglycemia. So this is called rebound hypoglycemia. So using octreotide along with that will prevent this recurrent hypoglycemia. That is the advantage of using this. And octreotide is used in this acromegaly, carcinoid syndrome and all that, Vipoma. These are the their actual approved uses, right? Octreotide, the problem with octreotide was major limiting factor for its acceptance as a therapy because it was to be given twice daily as injection. Nobody likes that. So octreotide acetate, which is a suspension of octreotide, that came into picture. That is a long acting, and usually a long active one, which is it has IM formulation also, that was effective for 1 to 2 weeks, more 10 to 14 days. But I think that has disappeared from the market. Now the only subcutaneous injection is available, which is to be given every 4 weeks, once in a 4 week. And this octreotide acetate needs to be used, it needs to be used, once you give a shorter duration trial with octreotide, this plain octreotide, to just judge the tolerability of the patient as well as the efficacy. Then only you shift to this longer acting formulation, that is octreotide acetate. So the side effects mainly with octreotide acetate or these drugs are usually the GI related, the nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, flatulence, steatorrhea, and the bowel output has heavy bowel output increased by 50% almost because of this steatorrhea and all that. It can also lead to biliary sludge and gallstone if are used continuously for more than 6 months, though the symptomatic gallbladder disease develops in 1% only. And those who have already gallstone but they do not have any symptoms, they are asymptomatic gallstone, so that is not a contraindication for continued use of these octreotide, etc. Further, as I said, these are somatostatin analogs. The somatostatin can inhibit TSH secretion, so they can induce hypothyroidism. That is why it is prudent to monitor TSH level or thyroid function test periodically, right? The pain at the injection site is more common with this octreotide acetate, this suspension, and on long-term use can also lead to vitamin B12 deficiency. They do have cardiac side effects as well. They can induce bradycardia in almost 1/4 of the patient, conduction disturbances. 1 out of every 10 patient develops different type of conduction disturbances as well. See, long acting, this lenriotide is actually the long acting. This is this was available in IM form actually, which was 10 to 14 days, having duration of action 10 to 14 days. But now this particular formulation is no longer is available. I searched on the net that it was not available anywhere. I think it has been replaced or substituted by this subcutaneous preparation, which has longer half-life for 4 weeks. It can work for 4 weeks. Its efficacy is similar to octreoacetate, that is also effective for 4 weeks, but it produces more sustained and uniform drug levels. So this is important. So we would always prefer lenriotide over octreotide acetate. If I have been given to choose opportunity to choose one of the agent for treatment of this, I would have definitely choose lenriotide. they have been approved. This lenalidomide has been approved for treatment of the acromegaly, the gastroenteric pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors, where it can increase the progression-free survival, and also the carcinoid syndrome. So major use in acromegaly, because this is more common, where we give treatment as usually 90 milligram subcutaneously every 4 weeks, for 3 months. And if patient we found that is stable on 60 to 90 milligram of dose, we can think of, or we can consider of extending the dosage duration. That is, we can give 120 milligram every 6 to 8 weeks. So we can further space this dosing. Dose is little increased, but the duration is increased 6 to 8 weeks. And this GP and NET, or this gastroenteric pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors, as well as this carcinoid tumors, we use always the 120 milligram subcutaneous every 4 weeks. This pasireotide is another newer agent in the list of somatostatin analog, but this agent has some specificity or peculiarity in the sense that it is actually used in Cushing disease. It binds to others, somatostatin receptors also. For example, it can bind to 1, 2, 3, except 4, but 5 also, and it has very high affinity for 5. If you compare its affinity for SST5 receptor, it is 40 times higher than other this somatostatin analog. So this is so high affinity for SST5. It is used in Cushing disease. In Cushing disease, it can be used both. It is available as the immediate release as well as long acting form also. So this can be given twice daily. To this long acting form is also there, but acromegaly, this only the long acting formulation that is only approved for acromegaly, not the immediate release, this long acting. And signs and symptoms of or ADRs of all these agents are similar to those of octreotide, which I have already discussed. Another growth hormone antagonist, the pegvisomant, is also a designer molecule, and this can be used in situation where nothing works. The somatostatin analog fails. The surgery is not able to control the hypersecretion of the growth hormone, etc. So usually this is a GH receptor antagonist and used to treat only acromegaly. It is approved for that. And the name itself suggests pegvisomant. It is actually pegylated. It is attached to polyethylene glycol, and that is usually done to decrease clearance and to improve its effectiveness also. So it lasts longer in the circulation. As I discussed that the growth hormone has two binding site, receptor binding site 1 and site 2. That is why it is able to bind two hormones receptor at the same time and leads to dimerization. It is also similar to growth hormone, but there are certain changes. For example, at site 1, it has 8 amino acids are substituted by different amino acids, and this led to the increased affinity of this pegvisomant to bind to the receptor. But at site 2, one amino acid is substituted. What it did, it actually reduced the affinity of this site to binding with the another receptor, and also reduced its ability to, it binds, but it reduced the ability of this particular molecule to induce conformational changes in the receptors or step subsequent to the receptor binding, the signaling cascade. So the molecule binds, this pegvisomant binds to the receptor. There occurs dimerization also occurs, but conformational change in the receptor does not occur. So there is no subsequent signaling cascade pathway is not activated, and the action of the growth hormone is not actually reflected or not displayed. This is because this is a competitive receptor antagonist, so it will not allow growth hormone to bind to these. The pegmicement is used in first loading dose, 40 milligram loading dose is given, and then 10 milligram per day. Maximum we can give 40 milligram per day. And this, if you see, actually can, it is inhibiting this growth hormone action, so it will lead to decrease IGF secretion and all that, so that will ultimately reduce the negative feedback action on the hypothalamus and pituitary, and this may actually increase the GH level and possibly adenoma growth. It can also increase liver enzyme but without hepatic failure, so it should not be used in patients who have unexplained increase in this ALT and all that, these liver hormones, transaminases, and should be discontinued when there is these liver enzymes increases to more than 3 standard deviations of the upper limit, and it can also cause hypertrophy at the injection site, and this could be so important that many a time it can lead to discontinuation of the treatment. Reason for the discontinuation: the development of pegmicement is considered as a very important advancement because it is highly effective in patients of acromegaly who are not responded, though the first treatment of choice is the transsphenoidal surgery to remove the adenoma. But if even after that actually the hypersecretion does not end, we usually give medical therapy. So somatostatin analogs are the first choice, but even if they are not responding, then we give usually the radiation therapy. So if after surgery SST analogs are being used and the secretion is not being controlled totally, we can use pegvisomant as a sole therapy, not to be added with SST analog. They can be used with sole therapy, or they can also be used as a temporizing measure when the patient is waiting for effect of this radiation to take place, because radiation to pituitary does not immediately produce effect. Like I was talking about radioactive iodine and all that. For radioactive iodine, it took 3 months to have peak effect on the thyroid and all that. So this takes time. So during that time, so just to tide over the crisis during this period, the pegvisomant is used as a sole therapy. GHRH analog synthetic, rather this is not analogs because only one agent is available till date. This is in fact a newer drug, so GHRH analog, it is a synthetic modified form of human GHRH. Actually the N-terminal portion of this GHRH, native human GHRH, is modified, and it prolonged the duration of action. The modification is such that it made it resistant to the degradation by certain enzymes like DPP4. I told you DPP4, where I discussed about DPP4 enzymes. DPP4 inhibitors, sitagliptin, saxagliptin, linagliptin, vildagliptin, allogliptin, these were all used in the treatment of diabetes mellitus. They prevent degradation of glucagon like peptide and all that. So this actually modified form of human GHR is more resistant to DPP4. It is not being damaged, so that has prolonged duration of action. It can increase the level of GH because G is the GHRH analog and IGF-1, but it is not to be used in treatment of this growth hormone deficiency and all that. It should not be used. It is only approved for the treatment of ART, that is antiretroviral therapy associated lipodystrophy in HIV infected patients. The dose is usually 2 milligram daily subcutaneously. Why this lipodystrophy? You can see in the first picture there is atrophy, the loss of fats from different areas, and here you can see a lump of fat tissue that is buffalo hump kind of thing. So this lipodystrophy may manifest in the form of atrophy or hypertrophy. So this is used in and it is said that this tesamorelin has selective action on, not on mainly on reducing adipogenicity, and has less effect on the insulin sensitivity and all that. Maybe some specific phenomena acting. So this is the specific activity of this particular. So we have discussed the growth somatotropic hormones. We have discussed, this corticotrophin, cortisol, etc. We'll discuss in a separate topic, that is corticosteroids. And we have discussed this. Thyroid, TSH, etc. we discussed in thyroids. The GnRH we will be discussing now, GnRH analogs and all that. But gonadotropins, etc. we will be discussing in maybe in this class only, gonadotropins etc. in the second part of this class. But the androgen, etc. we will be discussing in androgen hormones and etc. in this topic, sex hormones and all. So this is how this GnRH and the gonadotropin release and the gonadal hormone release is controlled. What is this loop, total feedback loop and all that. You can see this GnRH is secreted by hypothalamus, which has positive effect on LH FSH release. These are together called gonadotropins, and they act on pituitary and testis to produce gonadal hormone varying from testosterone to estrogen and progesterone. And also production of inhibin, not only inhibin, also the activin also, and sex steroid. This inhibin is important for inhibiting FSH release, both male and female, follicle stimulating hormone. Sex steroids, I told her, the progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone, they can have on different organs action on different tissues, not only genital tissue. They can have effect on bone, muscles, etc. and accessory sex organs, all these things. And the levels of these sex steroids actually, it can also inhibit this, have positive and negative feedback, both action on LH and FSH, because they are involved in the LH surge, etc. in females. Similarly, they can have positive and negative feedback action both on GnRH release from hypothalamus. So this is how this control of GnRH mediated release of LH FSH and their action on gonads and the target tissues occur. GnRH, the synthetic GnRH is called gonadorelin, because it is an acetate salt of synthetic human GnRH, which has the structure very absolutely similar to GnRH, but it is an acetate salt. So this gonadotropin, when it is used therapeutically, if needs to be used therapeutically, it is to be given in pulsatile manner, because that will produce the physiological cycles. So the advantage of this gonadotropin is that it has a certain advantage over gonadotropin treatment, because now gonadotropin has limited availability. Because of that, many of its diagnostic and therapeutic uses has been discontinued, because availability of the synthetic analogs of GnRH are available, and they have largely supplanted the use of gonadotropin in therapy. Though gonadotropin had certain benefits, for example, I said this gonadotropin for therapeutic purpose was used to given through in pulsatile manner through pump, and this drug is less likely to produce multiple pregnancies, and also there was decreased need for estimating or repeatedly estimating estradiol, serum estradiol level, or the follicle diameter or follicle size by the ultrasound. So this is the advantage. This gonadorelin is not actually, because of limited supply, it is not used. There are other agents which are available. This is a decapeptide, actually GnRH. So use of this gonadotropin is in the GST, that is GnRH stimulation test. This is to identify whether the hypogonadotropic hypogonadism is because of the pituitary lesion or the hypothalamic lesion. And also the diagnosis of the precocious puberty. This can give you an idea about whether this is because of the because of the hypothalamic deficiency, or because stimulation test because of the hypothalamus or the pituitary. And female infertility secondary to impaired GnRH secretion, because if CNRH secretion is not okay, that will lead to gonadotropin deficiency. So this female treatment of infertility with GnRH, this gonadorelin, actually led to the correction of infertility, etc. And I told you the advantages in comparison to gonadotropin therapy, that there is less chances of less chances of multiple pregnancies, and less need to monitor serum estradiol level or the follicle size, etc. But because of its infusion in pulsatile manner, it produces irritation due to infusion device, can lead to headache, nausea, flushing. These are the common side effects with this gonadorelin. So as a substitute for this GnRH, gonadorelin, because that has limited supply and all that, we have GnRH analogs. This can be these are analogs, means some modification in the amino acid has been done in the decapeptide, this GnRH, especially on the 6 amino acid, that actually reduced their proteolysis, and some changes in the last glycine amino acid that increases the receptor affinity. So these drugs have both more potent and actually the longer duration of action comparison to this GnRH, gonadorelin. So these both had led to the major advancement in the field of treatment of infertility, etc., where exactly, or precocious puberty, or prostate cancer, etc. So actually, if we use these drugs, they can actually stimulate gonadotropin secretion, because they are GnRH analog. They will first stimulate GnRH receptors, so that will lead to increased production of gonadotropins. And actually what happens, because of the pulsatile nature of release of GnRH, these compounds are not pulsatile, they are acting continuously, so that leads to the down regulation of the GnRH receptor. These are G protein coupled receptor. So there is initially stimulation and increase in GT secretion, gonadotropin secretion, followed by suppression or inhibition of the gonadotropin secretion. This is the it is a biphasic response kind of thing: initial stimulation followed by permanent inhibition, because of the down regulation of these receptors. These GnRH receptors are no longer responsive to the presence of GnRH analogs. This GnRH analog can be used to distinguish between constitutional, a patient is having delayed puberty, whether it is constitutional or hypogonadotropic hypogonadism because of that. So after the dose of this agent, if serum LH level is sufficient enough that it can suggest that it is early pubertal change, phase, but if fails to rise, then this is hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, or maybe because of the hypothalamic or pituitary lesion. But this does not exclude the constitutional delay in puberty, right? Also used in controlled ovarian stimulation, for example ART, and that is assisted reproduction technology, that is in vitro fertilization. Here this these GnRH analogs are used for suppression of endogenous LH surge, because here we are doing controlled ovarian stimulation. We take control of everything. We decide when to LH surge occur and not. We artificially induce LH surge on all that. We and that is achieved with the HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin injection. And just to prevent LH surge, we keep giving this GnRH analog that will suppress gonadotropin release in women. And everything we plan, total cycle, we take care of charge of the entire cycle, and is managed with the drugs given from outside. So this endogenous LH surge is necessary to be prevented, because it will otherwise can lead to ovulation, which we do not want. We want to trigger ovulation depending upon our need, our requirement, when we decide that it is to be given, when the follicle is sufficiently mature and all that. So this can be achieved with daily subcutaneous injection of leprolide or nasal nephrolin. Those who cannot do not prefer injections, etc., we can use nasal nephrolin. So we have various agents: goserelin, hysterelin, deslorelin is the newest in this. Leprolide is also known as leporelin, nephrolin, triptorelin, and we have the depot preparation of these agents may be effective up to 1 year. Hysterelin is available, which is effective up to 1 year. But if they are given, if they are used in this controlled ovarian stimulation, they are need to be given for a longer time, because they will first initially stimulate the everything, and then they produce inhibition. But in case of GnRH receptor antagonist, they need to be given for a shorter period. That protocol is also available. I will talk about this assisted reproduction technology, how the follicle is stimulated, grown, and ultimately harvested and lead. So that I will cover in second part of this class. These are the all analogs which are available, and you can see this GnRH is a decapeptide, decapeptide. And most of the substitutions are done on 6th, but at some there are different also, maybe double substitution. In many this last terminal glycine is removed, which actually increases receptor affinity, it is said, and this makes proteolysis more they more resistance to proteolysis. Other than that, there are these agents can be used in endometriosis. Endometriosis is nothing but this is the endometrium, that is the endometrial tissues, where endometrial tissues are present in the uterine cavity. So endometrial tissue present at any place other than the this uterine cavity is called endometriosis. Most common site is rectouterine pouch, and because this endometriosis, these tissues are also sensitive to cyclical change in the estrogen and progesterone level that occurs during a menstrual cycle. So it can be related with cyclical abdominal pain and could be quite disturbing to a woman. So the capability of this GnRH agonist to suppress ovarian function, because continuous GnRH is physiologically released in the pulsatile manner, but when you give continuously, it will actually inhibit gonadotropin release. So this can inhibit ovarian function and will literally inhibit these cyclical changes in the estrogen and progesterone, and patient gets relieved of these cyclical pain and all that. But this kind of therapy is recommended only for 6 months. But if the woman is deriving benefit and wants to continue with the treatment, then after 6 months it is little concern is that it might lead to reduction in the bone marrow density, because estrogen and progesterone all are reduced. So this will lead to enhanced bone loss, and considering that, then add back therapy was actually planned. This add back therapy is nothing, just to add a small dose of estrogen or progesterone along with this, and this will not actually compromise the pain relieving efficacy of this GnRH, and treatment can be continued for more than 6 months provided this estrogen and progesterone is added. But in many studies it has been said that there is no difference when you give it alone or with estrogen or progesterone. But as I think this is better, because theoretically it seems more attractive also that the women should receive a small dose of estrogen. So for this condition, we usually use leprolide or goserelin depot formulation, which are leprolide is effective for 1 month, and goserelin depot formulation is effective for 3 months. There is another condition called uterine fibroid. This is also called leiomyoma or fibroma, uterine fibroma. This is a benign estrogen sensitive tumor of the uterus, and this is actually because this tumor increases the surface area of the total endometrium, so there is increased blood loss during the menstrual cycle known as menorrhagia, and this menorrhagia can lead to ultimately anemia, and this pain can also, pelvic pain can also be a presentation. So in this case, we use GnRH agonist. 3 to 6 months treatment of GnRH agonist may reduce the size of the fibroid and all that. But once the treatment is stopped, the fibroid may recur over several months, and so now this the strategy is such that we use this GnRH agonist pre-operatively for 3 months before planning hysterectomy or myectomy. Depending upon the size of the fibroid, we can either remove entire uterus or we can remove only that. So when you planned this planned surgery, then before 3 months of the surgery, elective surgery, we can start giving this GnRH agonist. That will definitely reduce the size of the fibroid, and the surgery will be more easier. Prostate carcinoma, yes, prostate carcinoma, as we said, that like myoma was dependent on fibromyoma, fibroid was estrogen sensitive. So prostate cancer is a male genital organ, so it is its growth is promoted by androgen and all that. So in prostate carcinoma, we can produce a state like surgical castration with the medical treatment, and when androgen deprivation with continuous GnRH agonist and with in collaboration with androgen receptor antagonist, that actually produce condition exactly similar to surgical castration. This is called medical castration. What we are doing, we are depriving a man with total absence of androgen. We are ensuring that there is total absence of estrogen, so that there is no stimulus for the growth of the prostate cancer, because they are dependent on testosterone or androgen for their growth. So we can give continuous GnRH, so that will lead to the reduction, complete reduction in the gonadotropin secretion and LH, FSH. So that will lead to decrease testosterone level. Even if little bit of testosterone is being made, that is not also desirable. So we have now applied AR antagonist, nilotamide, bicalutamide, these androgen receptors. So even if testosterone is present, that will not be able to bind to the receptor. So we are adopting dual approach, ensuring that there is no androgenic action at all on the prostate cancer. The advantage of adding AR antagonist here is that also, because it will prevent this tumor flare response, not only increasing the efficacy of this treatment, ensuring medical castration, but also inhibiting the tumor flare response. What happens when we use only GnRH agonist? As I told you, this GnRH agonist initially will stimulate these receptors and will produce increased LHS, FHS production, that will lead to increased production and all that. So that can lead to this tumor flare response is characterized by increased bone pain in this prostate cancer patient if they have secondaries in the bones, or if there is secondaries in the vertebra and all that, that may lead to neurological sign and symptoms, and there may be transient increase in the growth of the prostate as well, and might lead to retention, urinary retention, etc. So this kind of problem can be avoided once you used AR antagonist. Along with that, not only increasing efficacy, but you are cutting down the possibility of this tumor flare response. Central precocious puberty. Central means it is because of the increased gonadotropin release, either GnRH or the gonadotropins. This can be because of the central precocious puberty. So this continuous administration of a GnRH agonist is indicated. So what we are doing, central precocious puberty is defined as development of secondary sexual characteristic in a girl who is less than 8 years of age and a boy who is less than 9 years of age. So this secondary sexual characteristics can be inhibited, once you reduce the concentration of this gonadotropins, that will lead to ultimately reduction in the gonadal hormones. So the continuous administration with this GnRH agonist, because they are longer acting, they are recommended, but it is always advised, though central precocious puberty is idiopathic in most of the cases. but it is always prudent to have MRI examination of hypothalamic and pituitary area to find out any lesion which may be the reason for this central precocious puberty. This is a must. One must get this radiological investigation done before starting central treatment with GnRH agonist in central precocious puberty. And the goal of the treatment is to treat the girl up to the age of 11, that is for 3 years, and for boys also 3 years up to 12 years. And they can be used by there are IM depot preparation of leprolide, which can vary, its effect may vary from 1 to 3 months, and better is to give once yearly hysterine. This is the compliance is very good in children because you can give once a year hysterine implant. Other uses of this GnRH analog can be the gonadal suppression of in breast and ovarian carcinoma, because these breast carcinoma are also estrogen dependent. Ovarian carcinoma may also be dependent on this gonadal hormone. So usually tried in cases of advanced breast carcinoma or ovarian carcinoma, because these continuous GnRH suppression by GnRH analog can lead to gonadal suppression. The side effects are usually depends on the gender of the patient. For example, in female usually they can produce menopausal symptoms. For example, they can produce hot flashes, sweating, can cause headache, etc. So to cut down these episodes of menopausal symptoms, one may require add-back therapy with a small dose of estrogen. So that will definitely kind of estrogen replacement therapy kind of thing, can cause depression, because this is associated with depression, decreased libido, vaginal dryness, breast atrophy, reduced bone mineral density, and osteoporosis, and maybe secondary osteoporotic fractures as well. And MAT also same andropause kind of picture is produced: hot flushes, sweats, edema, gynecomastia, decreased libido, decreased hematocrit, decreased bone mineral density, and asthenia. Overall, lassitude, weakness. You feel like tired all the time. In children, because these drugs can initially stimulate release of gonadotropins, so they can produce temporary or transient exacerbation of precocious puberty. The signs and symptoms may actually get exaggerated. The nefarelin, which is available through, this is the only nasal spray, nefarelin end to end, you can always remember. Remember, this can cause either sinusitis or may aggravate sinusitis. This is the side effect of the nefarelin spray. So this was the thing which I discussed today, that is related to growth hormone, GnRH analogs, etc., somatostatin analogs, so treatment of acromegaly, short stature, this all fertility, etc., this precocious puberty. Next time we'll discuss this GnRH receptor antagonist, as well as many other hormones, or this assisted controlled ovarian stimulation in assisted reproduction technology, etc. There are many things are to be discussed in the next part of this class. So by then I would rather say stay tuned. The day after tomorrow I will be having that class. So with that we'll finish the pituitary hormones. So guys, once again I am advising you to have this Telegram app on your mobile phone or tab, whichever smart system you are using, and this is available on both iOS and as well as Android platform. So just only having this Telegram app will not serve the purpose. You need to join this livedaily.me/chat group, so that you can receive notification about the class or timetable of the classes, etc., that are going to be conducted on this YouTube. So that is always good to have a priori idea about the classes, class schedules, etc. But on this group you cannot share any message. This is a one-sided traffic. Only we can share, and many a time or most of the time we also share the link of the YouTube lecture. If you missed that lecture to watch live, you can always click that link, and that will take you directly to the the lecture that is uploaded on the YouTube, and you don't have to search for that particular lecture and all that. So this is the advantage of this Telegram channel. So you have downloaded it, ask other your friend to get it. The advantages of this subscription based the plus service which is being offered by Unacademy is a subscription based service, but it is a, I would rather say it is a premier service with a lot of additional features which you will not get on free platform, and that's why it is available on the paid basis. And this is something which you can say the solution for all your problems under one roof. So having this being part of it would definitely help you in preparing well for your entrance examination. But after all, it is your hard work and genuine effort that actually are responsible for your selection. But a good guide and strategy and the good informative study material is also equally important, because if one can do everything all is on his own, then I think there is no need of any school, no need of any teacher and all that. That is always required, but because this is something which is required for upliftment of your career or growth in your career, because MBBS has no value nowadays unless until you are a specialist, or nowadays there is a increasing trend that you should be a super specialty in something. So why to waste time? Try to clear this exam as early as possible and with good rank and from good colleges. So it might pinch you that you are supposed to pay, or you are paying for a particular channel, buying a subscription, but everything is good things are not free. They are actually available at a cost. So just give a thought, second thought, and it's my genuine request or suggestion that you guys should be on this platform, so that you have higher chances of cracking an exam. This is the another app, which is Unacademy Learning app, which where also we have free classes running, that is in the form of special classes. The advantage of this app is these special classes are also absolutely free, and we take this, the same educators are involved everywhere. I take special classes. I am now covering antibiotics on this, antimicrobial agents on this special classes, like I'm talking about endocrinology on endocrine drugs on White YouTube channel. Same, these special classes I'm talking about antimicrobial agents. On Plus I'm talking about central nervous system. And this is not all other educators, they all have they are conducting their own topics on all these platforms. The advantage of these special classes are and this is not only for NEET PG, I'm talking about any aspirant for maybe for UPSC or for IIT JEE. This kind of facility is there for everyone. So it is not only for NEET PG or something like that. The advantage of these special classes is that you have got opportunity to interact with educator, which is one of the feature of the Plus, so that you get it free. And also if you follow a particular educator on this platform, then it becomes easier for it. You can directly send a message to the educator regarding any query, any doubt, not only from the special. If you are attending his classes on via YouTube also, if you find anything there, because there you do not have any opportunity to interact with the educator, you can share those queries also, and an educator will feel happy to come back to you with your answer to your queries and all that. So this is the advantage of this special class. And this special class interface is something which is very similar to Plus, and you will have this is actually will give you a feel about it, how the plus will look like and all that. So this is a kind of trailer of the subscription based service, that is plus. So you, if don't have this app, get it as early as possible and ask your friend also to have this. And if you like my classes, so why not you join special classes also, and this also, and if possible by subscription you can watch my classes at all the places. So if you have planned to buy subscription, you have to go to this app, to NEET this gold category, where you find out NEET PG, and under NEET PG you have this plus which you have to select, and you can accordingly buy get subscription. And subscription, I told you, is available from right from 1 month to 24 months, but this is what I am recommending. What if you want to derive a full benefit of this particular paid service, then you have to stick to this particular plus for at least 12 months. Reason I have already explained to you, because this is the time, this much time is required to cover up entire syllabus. You will come to you will be taught by speciality from a specialist from all the speciality, and you will have opportunity to attend all these special courses which are customized and specifically designed for a particular PG entrance examination and all that. And 24 months is very good for those who are still have not cleared their MBBS and all that. And but don't forget to apply this 10% discount. To get this 10% discount, this referral code, this is mandatory. Without this you will lose 10%. That is a good amount of money. If you have decided to buy it for 24 months, you will be missing or losing 24,000 if you do not apply that. So you can buy 12 months subscription for 24,750, and the only prerequisite is to apply this referral code. And those who buy this subscription for 6 months or more than that, they are given opportunity to enjoy the no cost EMI facility. That will be will be little pocket friendly for you as well, because you don't have to pay everything up front. You can pay it in installment, that too without increase in the total cost of the subscription, and you can pay by using different digital mode, whichever you feel is convenient and is available with you. So guys, this is NEET PG. As I said, you have if you have not subscribed, subscribe it, and click this bell icon, follow it, this channel, and get notification in time. Share it with your friends. You can send share the link of this if you're any of your friend is not knowing this, you can share the link of this lecture and ask him to also follow this NEET PG YouTube channel, so and get the maximum benefit out of it. And if you liked the lecture, you just you really enjoyed this lecture, you just give me a thumbs up. And last but not the least, again I am reminding you, I am emphasizing you that whenever you have planned to join Plus, apply this code Dr. Pramod. This will give you 10% discount, and this will also add to my will improve my numbers as well. So with this, I think today's topic is over. Half over, I can say, rather. And next time, the day after tomorrow, I will be finishing this pituitary. Till then, dear, have a good time, enjoy studying and all that, and stay tuned, because things are only half done. I will be finishing next time. It's time to say goodbye and good night.